Hey everybody, this is Josh Mckinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 116 of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. Today, we're getting into some randomness. I really loved doing the random show like 6-7 weeks ago, whenever the last time, I guess it's probably been the beginning of the year. I think that's how we started. And this was not the goal. This was not what I anticipated, but the random show, I just got to kind of talk about all the things that have been on my mind. And guess what? Most of the stuff that is on my mind turns into an episode eventually. And what was cool was I did all of them in like segments. I did them in like little 5-minute segments. And then I got to hear some feedback from people on what they liked and what they wanted me to dig deeper on, or they just wanted more information on. And I thought that was a really fun thing to do maybe every couple months, and I want to get back to that. Also, just quick thoughts on future of the podcast before we dig in into the episode. So I've been pushing the Patreon page. I'm actually going to delete the Patreon page. And I know that sounds crazy. I know, oh my gosh, Josh, don't delete the Patreon page. I'm so upset about it. Well, here's the thing. When it comes to me, for me as a business, the amount that I put into that page, the amount of time that I've been putting in versus the amount that I get out is very, very, very non-existent. I could stick through it. I could continue to build that page up. But what I thought would be more fun is, first off, if you are somebody who supports the Patreon page currently, you'll not get charged again, but I have a special gift for you. Someone it's really cool that you guys have supported me. And so I have something that is worth more than you have put into the Patreon page over the last 4 months that I've had it. So you will definitely be getting much more of your money back. But like I said, it's not the right fit for me. I found myself trying really hard to do stuff on the Patreon page, and I wasn't able to focus on simplifying jiu-jitsu. I wasn't able to focus on the free content that I put out. And for me, that's what I feel like I'm good at. And so when I'm putting out really good content, but it's hidden behind a paywall, I know that only a certain amount of people can get it. And I don't care for that. That's why I was giving away pieces for free on the Patreon page a lot anyway. And so we're going to just get rid of that, but make Suck Less Saturday free. I'm going to start to put episodes up every Saturday. And I think what I want for Suck Less Saturday is I want to only do listener mail, if that is possible. I know I have one coming out this Saturday, and I'll explain more about it and stuff. But I really want to just do listener mail. I thought that it would be fun, and I can just get a little more interaction, okay? So if you guys have questions specifically that you want on the show, you can always just message me anything, and eventually I get to it. But if you ever have something that you want, a question that you go, man, I think this is a good question, or I would just like to hear Josh's information, maybe this is something that I feel like I'm not the only one who struggles with it. If you guys ever have that question, send me an email and tell me it's for Suck Less Saturday. Say, hey, Suck Less Saturday question for you. You can even make it the subject of it. I'm much more inclined to read it quickly if you give me that. But I really want to hear from you guys. And then also on those emails, let me know if it's cool to use your name or if it's not, because some people like it when I don't mention them at all. But if you're giving me a question, I would love to let people know who it is. That's pretty much the Patreon thing I wanted to talk about, and then where we're going with Suck Less Saturdays. Now, I know I started on the Patreon page doing some match breakdowns. I don't know where that fits yet. I don't know if I'm just going to start to do match breakdowns on YouTube. And the reason I don't know it is because I don't know legally if I'm allowed to do that. I don't know if it is like, copyrighted written, and on YouTube on a public platform, I am much more likely to get caught. I didn't really care when I was on the Patreon page, right? But I'm going to do match breakdowns eventually. I just don't know it to what capacity. And we're just going to keep crushing it with this show. We're going to keep, and for me, I'm going to put a lot more of my mental focus into simplifying jiu-jitsu, our production company. And speaking of that, if you guys are not on the email list and you want to get better at jiu-jitsu, you want to have more efficient and effective jiu-jitsu, you absolutely should be on the email list. And the best way to do that is to go to simplifyingjujitsu.com and sign up for my free ebook, Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu. I send out an email, I probably send out 4 a week, and they're always on something. They're on inspiration in jiu-jitsu. They're on how to train more effectively. They're on something that I found that I thought I would share with you guys that isn't my content. It's just kind of a really cool way that I can communicate with people that are excited about the stuff that I'm talking about on the show. And it's just a little more than the 1 hour episode that I do every week. And so if you want to keep hearing from me, almost you get the feeling that I'm kind of one of your coaches, because a lot of the conversations that I talk about, a lot of the conversations I have on the email list come from conversations with my students. And so that's where my inspiration for the email list really comes from. And so I end up really get to have some good conversations and give you guys some good content. And I want as many people there as possible receiving that content. And so if that is you, go to simplifyingjujitsu.com and sign up for my free ebook. Yeah, I think that's all. Let's go ahead and get into the random show. I think I kept this very non-offensive. I don't think that this episode will get me canceled. I did say something. I did, say something offensive towards the end, probably. I think. I recorded this a whole day ago, man. I don't remember what I said. I probably said something crazy. I'm probably going to get canceled after this episode. Well, there's really only one way to find out. Let's go ahead and jump into the episode. Hey guys, before we jump into the episode, I just wanted to give you just a little information on something that we are offering this month at simplifyingjujitsu.com, and that is 40% off of Train at 60 and Beyond. This is an instructional that my father, Steve McKinney, put together, and 60 different moves and mindsets that work when you are 60 years old in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There are a lot of guys that are 60 that are black belts, right? But there are very few who started after 45 and then got their black belt. There are so few people to do that. And the reason is because it's very hard to do, and there's so little information on how to get from 40 years old to get your black belt. It's a different sport than when you're me and you're 27, right? It is a different battle. And so what are you going to do about it? How are you going to handle it? My recommendation is Train at 60 and Beyond. It is currently $36. That's 40% off. That is nuts. Literally, you are paying less than $1 per move / mindset. And it is great quality stuff. It's filmed in great quality, and it is only available at simplifyingjujitsu.com with the promo code OLDMAN. So now let's jump into the episode. All right, guys, I'll start this episode with a hot take. The random show will go hot take to start. Most jiu-jitsu seminars absolutely suck. They are a huge waste of money. Most of the time, you should go in with the mindset that I'm paying $75, $100, $200 to just hang out with the instructor that I'm learning from, because most instructors aren't very good. What I mean by that is, for $200, you can learn for 2 hours from this guy. And a lot of times it's no different than if you went and paid the $10 drop-in fee at his gym, except sometimes the stuff that is shown is even less useful. I think a lot of people that have been to jiu-jitsu seminars kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about. I won't give any specific examples of people's seminars that I've been to, but I've been to a lot of seminars where you can tell that the goal is just to make you say, wow, or, oh, that's a cool move. We call them seminar moves, and they don't give you something that actually makes you better at jiu-jitsu, right? They give you 5 techniques. Maybe 10 people from the seminar use it. If we're lucky, maybe 1 person from the seminar gets something out of it. But going into seminars like that, as a black belt, when you go into a seminar, if you want to teach better seminars, this is really, really simple. Go in with the goal of actually making people better at something. Don't go in and say, I'm going to teach a seminar. Anybody can teach a jiu-jitsu seminar. Anybody can watch YouTube and teach a jiu-jitsu seminar. But only good instructors can make people better at jiu-jitsu. Only good coaches can make the individuals better at jiu-jitsu. This isn't some crazy hot take either. This is true. Most jiu-jitsu seminars that I've been to, probably 90% of jiu-jitsu seminars that I've been to have absolutely sucked. Then the 10%, the other ones, have been completely jiu-jitsu changing, completely life-changing things. Specifically, guys have learned a ton from, have really, really enjoyed their seminars. Let me think what would be some of my favorite ones. I always tell people one of my favorite seminars was when Sean Williams came to my coach Kyle's. He's come a few times. Man, those seminars are so good. And the reason is because Sean doesn't just show you techniques. He makes you better at jiu-jitsu. He gives you the one thing that actually matters for jiu-jitsu progression. I'll talk about that in a second. I think that's third on my notes of the random show, is the one thing that actually matters in making you better at jiu-jitsu. The one thing. There's only one. And I know that sounds nuts, but there is only one thing that actually makes you better at jiu-jitsu. And good coaches can give you that. Okay. Who else is great? Who are some of my other really, really fun seminars I've been to? Man, the Sean Williams ones are by far my favorite. Okay, another one would be John Thomas. John Thomas is a very big technique only guy, right? And I was kind of just bashing technique only seminars, but he will show them in a way. Okay, I'll give you guys a hint. He'll show them in a way that lets you understand jiu-jitsu deeper. That's all we're looking for. That's all we're ever talking about. Can you understand jiu-jitsu deeper, more deeply? Can you have a deeper and honestly a more simple understanding of jiu-jitsu? That's the goal when we are training each night. That should be our goal. Can I understand this deeper? Can I understand this better? Because if I could just understand this better, it doesn't matter which techniques I'm learning from this position, because I can now apply them because I have an understanding. You can't apply technique without an understanding. Something I would say at my seminars is a technique is just an expression of our understanding of jiu-jitsu, right? So for example, when I'm doing my straight ankle locks at a seminar, if I show everybody in the room the same exact straight ankle lock and I don't talk, I just say, my leg goes here, finish the ankle lock. That's all I show. The best leg lockers will be able to do the leg lock much easier than anyone else. They will be able to grasp that leg lock much quicker, whether they're blue belts, whether they're white belts, whether they're black belts. Whoever has the deepest understanding of attacking the legs and controlling the legs is going to be able to apply that technique quicker and is going to get more out of that technique. So technique is great, but only with understanding. And it's like when I go to John Thomas seminars, he shows technique with understanding. Someone else that I really, really loved their seminar, I did these two in the same week at my school, was John and Chris Paynes. Chris Paynes, when he came in, he taught a seminar that changed the way that I teach. And honestly changed a lot of my perspective in jiu-jitsu. And that's what we're going to talk about in just a second. But while I go to pick up my notes, because I dropped them while I was ranting, we'll move on. I'm going to try to not dig in too deep to these topics, just kind of gloss over them. So then you guys can let me know which ones you really like and you want to hear more about. My next thought, my next topic, my next hot take is the athlete and the artist. So there are a lot of ways to train jiu-jitsu. And I think for most people, we train jiu-jitsu as an athlete. And there's a problem with that. Most people aren't very good athletes. In training jujitsu as a jujitsu athlete, you might miss out on a lot if you are not an athlete. So something that I plan on talking about a little later is just the idea of the physical and the mental side of jujitsu. That's really what the athlete and the artist is. The artist is the understander, and the athlete is the performer, right? The athlete is the one who can make things happen. The artist is the one who solves the problems, who figures out why we make things happen and how more efficiently we can make things happen. So I wanted to talk about an artist first in jiu-jitsu. I think I wanted to talk about the athlete first. I think I screwed myself over on my notes there. Actually, let's talk about the athlete first. So when you are an athlete in jiu-jitsu, something to understand is we are all jiu-jitsu athletes. If you do jiu-jitsu, you are an athlete. It's an athletic sport. You have to be. So if you are an athlete, treat your body as such. This is very hard for people to understand. People say they want to live the jiu-jitsu lifestyle. One of the most important parts of living the jiu-jitsu lifestyle is living a life to feel physically good. Obviously, we're all beat up, we're all sore, but we don't have to all be overweight. We don't all have to have horrible cardio. We don't all have to live in the body that a lot of people live in to do jiu-jitsu. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with being overweight. There's nothing wrong with being inflexible. There's nothing wrong with being weak. But they make it harder as an athlete. That is a big thing. They don't make it harder as an artist. They make it harder as an athlete. They can make it harder as an artist too. We'll get to that. But as an athlete, I've been relating a lot of jiu-jitsu to football because, I guess yesterday, this is as the time of my recording, was the Super Bowl. So there's just been a lot of football on, a lot of thoughts, something in football that is talked about a lot from the quarterback position. If you don't know what in American football, the quarterback position is the guy that throws the ball. Something thought of a lot, talked about a lot, is can he make all of the throws? Okay. I know that sounds like a weird thing for someone who doesn't understand the sport that much. Like they're all athletes. They should all be able to throw. It's not that everyone can throw, but can they make every throw? Because there are certain throws that have to be delivered at certain speeds for them to work. If the ball's in the air too long, that throw doesn't work very well. If you can't throw it far enough, some of these NFL quarterbacks can throw the ball 40 yards. Some of them can throw the ball 70 yards. There's a huge difference in those 30 yards, right? There is a monster difference in whether or not that part of the field is open or not, right? If I get a wide receiver way out there that's wide open and no one's around, but I can only throw the ball 40 yards and he's 60 yards away, it doesn't matter because I can't make the throws. In jiu-jitsu technique, it is the exact same. There are certain positions in jiu-jitsu that you can only do with a certain level of flexibility. Ideally, we want to be able to make every throw as a jiu-jitsu athlete. We want to be able to have the option to play any position in jiu-jitsu, whether because we are flexible enough to do it, or we're strong enough to do it, or we just figure out a way around to be able to do it. But a big thing is being able to say, hey, there are no techniques that are off limits for me because I focus on myself as an athlete, because I lift, because I diet, because I whatever. And I'm going to go on a rant about lifting and diet and steroids and all that kind of stuff in just a second. But before that, let's look at the artist, okay? Because we talked about the athlete, the person who is just the physical, right? The taking care of our body and the jiu-jitsu lifestyle to be able to perform the jiu-jitsu that we should be deeply understanding as an artist. Okay. So now we'll talk about the artist. An artist, it's a creator. It's somebody who says, I want to do jiu-jitsu this way because ... because it warms my heart, because it makes me smile, because it's interesting to me, because it's useful for me, because I want to be a big competitor and I think that this position will be useful. That is the artist's job. The artist kind of guides the training. It kind of guides the understanding. I'm going to give you guys some tips for an artist in just a second, and how to develop yourself as an artist, and how to and why to develop yourself as an artist. Okay, because you can be great at jiu-jitsu and not be much of an artist. You can be a phenomenal athlete and a technique collector. You don't need deep understanding if you have the right coach and the right instructor, right? You don't. A lot of people prove that with great coaches. They have amazing coaches and they're very physically dominant people. And guess what? Their jiu-jitsu is awesome because of it. They don't have deep understanding though. You don't have to be an artist. There are athletes only. There are artists only. There are people that have no athletic bone in their body. Still, you do have to be some, you have to be one, or you have to be a little bit of one, no matter what, right? Even if you feel like you're not an artist at all, you do need some understanding. But in my opinion, if you think about an athlete, you think about an artist. What do you think if you focused on one? You put 100% of your time either developing yourself as an athlete or developing yourself as an artist. Which one would you reach the 95 percentile of your potential, or 95% of your potential? Which one would get to 95% first? Would it be the physical or would it be the mental? Would it be the physical? Right? You would, with 100% focus, you would develop as an athlete and top out as an athlete infinitely faster than you would as an artist. So that is why the focus should be understanding. Every single night in class, the goal should be to understand jiu-jitsu more deeply and understand how to apply it more deeply. That is what an artist is. That is what an artist does. But how does an artist develop? How does an artist grow? Simply inspiration and perspective. That's all you need to be a good jiu-jitsu artist. You need inspiration and perspective. And really, those two things are kind of the same. So you really only need perspective. In the book, I reference this book constantly because it's one of my favorites. And I think it really applies to somebody who wants to be highly effective in jiu-jitsu. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And something really, there's actually a lot of really great nuggets in that book. But something I always talk about is the part where Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand and then to be understood. And so often in jiu-jitsu, I said that there's only one thing that actually matters at a seminar. And it is, does this person help you understand jiu-jitsu more deeply? Seek first to understand and then to be understood. So often we don't understand very deeply, but we want to teach. We want someone else to understand us. We want to invent new moves, but that doesn't come from just being random. That only comes from getting a lot of perspectives. If you take a car ride with me, if you do jiu-jitsu and you take a car ride with me, we're going to talk about jiu-jitsu. I'm, of course, going to go on some crazy caffeinated rants. But something else that'll happen is I'll ask you like 50 questions about your opinion on things in jiu-jitsu. And it'll be really specific. Oh, that position you play. Do you like it? Do you like its effectiveness? Do you think that it works? Do you think it doesn't work? This way you've been training. How do you feel about it? Has it helped you? Has it hurt you? What about when you trained this way? Was that better for you? What was the best training you've ever gotten? Why don't you just train like that more? I'm going to do that a lot. Okay. It's not for you. I really don't care if you get better. It's actually for me. I ask a lot of questions because I'm trying to gain perspective. Even though I'm asking white belts questions, I'm gaining perspective. That does not mean that they are teaching me. It means that I am learning from them. I'm gaining perspective from them. They're not saying, yeah, this is what I do on this guard pass. No. They're saying, hey, it feels good when you taught the guard pass this way. And I go, oh, that's interesting. That's a huge part of perspective for me, right? That is a big perspective that I should know about. I should know that you understand more deeply and you can apply it easier when I say it a certain way, because then I can start thinking about it that way. And maybe I now have a deeper understanding. That is the big thing. That's the big idea of jiu-jitsu, is just deep understanding. Sometimes I get on these rants at seminars and people will do question and answer. And no matter what the question is, somehow I will end up on the answer is understanding jiu-jitsu more deeply. It is not any technical thing. It is just understanding whatever position you're working. You just need to think about it more deeply. It's not one move. It's not one technique that is losing and you just need that technique fixed. Usually, every once in a while it is. Sometimes people just are missing a detail, right? Or I just have a more efficient detail. But generally, it's the whole play of the position. It's the whole idea of the position that they're missing. They went in and they focused on the small parts before they focused on the deep understanding. This is tough, right? Because not all coaches teach in this way. So you don't have a ton of options of people to learn from that teach in this style. This year for Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu, anything that I put out is going to be taught in this style. It's going to be different. And I have some really exciting stuff coming out. And I also, side note, I have some seminar opportunities opened up. Yeah, sure. Some scheduling opportunities that are opened up this year. If you guys want to have Josh Mckinney in for a seminar, at least for the first 6 months, I'm not going to schedule anything past that. So like until July, if you guys want to have me in, make sure to either message me, or if you aren't the owner of your school, have your school owner message me, and you can get pricing details, scheduling details, stuff like that. And then also, super secret thing that I really, really, really want to check off the list this year is doing a seminar with my coach, Kyle. I think that would be a really fun seminar. I know it would be the funniest seminar you've ever been to. I could guarantee that. But I think it would be one of the better ones that you've ever been to too. Kyle and I both have really unique styles of teaching, and we feed off of each other really well. And it would be a blast. Or even really biggest suggestion out of anything, I would love to do a 2-day camp, Josh McKinney, Kyle Watson. If anyone is interested in that, send me a message. It would be the first time for us doing it. So send me some type of offer, send me some type of suggestion of something you would like to do. We just want to teach together, right? For me, like as a coach, I look at some of my guys that are my weight or around my weight and are getting close to black belt as competitors. And I always think, man, I really want to make sure to do divisions with some of my students. And then something else I look at is I want to coach with my coach. I want to instruct with my coach. I would really love to do that too. So that was a random side note. Let's talk about steroids. So everybody is on steroids, right? When we talk about the physical, they do make a lot of sense, right? Because think about it. You can be bigger, stronger, faster, and most importantly, train more. Feel physically good. You feel physically better when you train, and you get to train more. Doesn't sound like a bad thing, right? Doesn't sound like it would hurt your jiu-jitsu at all, right? I'll address a few random things on steroids. For me, I've talked about this on the podcast. I don't take any banned substance from like USADA because one, I don't want to tarnish the legacy that I hope to create. That's huge. But two, just simply for longevity. Jiu-jitsu is not about the competition for me. I want to win worlds at black belt. I want to do big stuff. But if I don't, it's not a huge deal. And I would never sacrifice. Let's say that you could even say you're going to lose 5 years off your life if you did steroids now, or you started on steroids, but you will win a world title. I still wouldn't do it. And I wouldn't even think about it. And that's not to say that I wouldn't think about doing steroids, but I just wouldn't think about that trade-off. If I'm 65, If I'm 70, I'm starting to get old, I feel absolutely horrible. And then you say, hey, you can feel good for the next 5 years or bad for the next 10. I would do steroids then. I would do all the steroids. Give me everything. But now I don't think that it's like that. I think that I am hurting myself in the future. And also, I think personally that there is a mental weakness about it. I maybe have talked about this on the podcast. I've talked about this with people a lot, but I don't mention this very often. But like, this is why I don't care that a lot of guys in my division are on steroids. That most of the guys in my division are on steroids, meaning more than 50%, majority are on steroids. And probably, if I'm being totally honest, when I'm competing at Worlds or something, probably upwards of 80% or more. And, I can explain the IBJJF testing process to you, and it's embarrassing. And I can explain all the other non-existent testing processes, which are even more embarrassing. But I promise you, almost everybody's on. I don't care though. They need it, right? I don't need it. Mentally, they need their steroids, right? They need to be on the mat longer. They should do more because I'm coming, right? That's how we should think about things. Don't think about them in if I just took this, I would win. Who cares about winning? It's not going to matter. Most likely you could win a world title. And if you didn't understand branding, if you didn't understand marketing, you won't even make any money off of it, or you'll barely make any, definitely not what you put in. Don't do them. It's a bad idea. If you need them because you're weak, take them, take more of them. But for the people that aren't, just stay true. I promise it's way more relevant. It is like looking back, even if I got to have a better career from now, had I have taken them, wouldn't even think about it. Even if it meant I wasn't injured, again, wouldn't take them. I think that for most people though, they look at it as this evil thing. And I don't really think that much of that. I don't care. I know I have friends that are on. They're still my friends. I don't care. It's not, I don't know. It's this thing that is thought of as like the most relevant thing in jiu-jitsu, or it's talked about, at least competitive jiu-jitsu. And to me, understanding is the most relevant thing in competitive jiu-jitsu. If you need them, still listen to the show. I still like you. But if you don't, commit to it and don't take them. Because you will get offered, you will get to a point, especially if you're a young athlete coming up, you're going to get to a point where it does make sense, where you say, man, I'm not where I want to be. It does make sense. And if you get there, just work harder, figure out a way around it, problem solve, find a deeper understanding, stay true to yourself. That's my random steroid rant in the middle of this episode. What else was I supposed to talk about? Okay, cool. Let's talk about lifting and yoga, because that does feed into steroids. This is my big problem with steroids and jiu-jitsu. This is the one thing that does annoy me, that makes me want to hurt people. People that talk to people that don't use and give them advice. Okay? You don't get to give us advice. You don't. You're on. We're not. We are not the same. We are not the same. If I train as hard as I can, there is no way I'm making it back to class at night. Now you train as hard as you can. Then you get to go lift, and then you get to go do sprints. Then you get to go and train at night. And then you wake up the next morning and you do it all over again. I'm lucky if I can train hard twice at 28 years old now. I'm almost 28, guys. I'll be 28 in like 9 days. Chill out. I know I went too quick. I know I'm 27, but I think physically I'm about 36. So Injury wise, I'm about 36, but you get to go out and you get to see these people, and then they say, oh yeah, jiu-jitsu athletes, we should all be lifting like this. And it's not true. If we were on steroids, it probably is the most efficient way to lift. That's why they all do it. But if you're not, it's not. When you are lifting, you should only have one goal when you're lifting weights. That is to get stronger. Okay. That is what lifting weights does. Doesn't always have to be, you can gain strength and not really gain a lot of weight or gain no weight. It's to get stronger. Don't think, oh, if I lift a weight, I'm going to blow up. I'm going to be huge. No, it's not like that usually. Some people are genetically just gifted. And keep in mind, there are some people that can train the way I described, but they're probably the top 1% of the top 1% of athletes. And, if you got 10 guys at your gym that all train like that, I'd hate to break it to you, but most likely, not all 10 of those guys are just the most genetically gifted people that you've ever seen. So when it comes to lifting, we've got to make sure of something else, though. So we want to gain strength. We also want to recover. What we like, this is just my preference of lifting. Just like I'll give you in a way of understanding jiu-jitsu, and then I say, okay, now specifically, this is the technique that I use that applies to it, to those ideas. And, you can use your own technique, but I think the ideas are true, right? Gaining strength and making sure you are recovered are two of the most important things when it comes to injury prevention when it comes to injury prevention too. But when it comes to lifting, that's really why a lot of us lift in jiu-jitsu. Is why a lot of us do yoga in jiu-jitsu, is simply to stay on the mats in jiu-jitsu. So for me, I lift once a week. We do like a 15 to 20 minute full body HIT workout, high intensive training workout. And so this would be, and most of it is on old school Nautilus equipment from the 80s, and it's an awesome workout. It's how I've lifted pretty much my whole jiu-jitsu career, except for when I'm not lifting. And I have experimented with everything else, but this is the only thing that I can consistently lift in. Even when I switch that workout to be twice a week, I get about 8 to 10 weeks, and then my body starts breaking down. It's just too much for me. Knowing your body is going to be really important too with lifting, with doing these things. And the only way to do that is just being self-aware, being very self-aware. But now let's move from lifting to yoga. This is something I've been doing more of lately. And I am in no way an expert on yoga. With lifting, I was a personal trainer for 6 years. I've done jiu-jitsu for the last 14. So I've lifted specifically for jiu-jitsu for the last 14 years. And my dad has also owned a very successful personal training business my entire life. And so I've been around the business a lot. I know about this stuff. Yoga, I don't. Yoga, I've done much, much less of. And my wife has been pushing me to do more of it. And actually, my wife, who just got her blue belt, my brand new blue belt wife, man, how ridiculous. Can't believe that. I'm going to have her on the show soon. I'm going to have my first blue belt on the show. I don't think I've had a blue belt on the show. I think I've had a white belt on the show. I don't think I've had a blue belt. I have to have my first blue belt. No, I have had a blue belt. I might have had a few now that I think about it. When I've had different content creators. Random thought. Let's go back to yoga. My wife was pushing me to do more yoga. And, I've talked about off a little bit, just having some rib injuries, and yoga and breath work together and apart have been the biggest thing. I've spent the entire year since March. I've been injured in 2021. I had one horrific rib injury, and probably the worst one that you've ever heard of, except I have a student who got in a car accident and they actually removed his. It wasn't that bad, but had I went to the doctor, if I wasn't a real man, he probably wouldn't have recommended ever doing jiu-jitsu again. It was a rough one, but we're good now. And I really put a lot of that to yoga and breath work because I was injured this entire year or all of last year. And then since January 1st, doing more yoga, doing more breath work, I can train again and I can train hard again. And for the first time in, I want to say it would have been 10 months. Last week, I trained twice in the same day, both days hard, both did every round. I have literally not done that in 10 months, just not able to do it. And I was able to now. And I was just so excited. I was so happy. I was so happy about that. But I really think it came from just the overall strength and flexibility of yoga. I think I was creating a lot of inflexible positions for my ribs, right? Maybe, for example, maybe usually when I invert, my hamstrings take a lot of the flexibility or take a lot of the stretch. But what happened was, as I was injured, I stopped moving as much. My hamstrings became less flexible. So now when I go to invert, I'm actually putting more pressure on my ribs, and it caused me to injure a rib on my other side. And so it was really, really frustrating. But when I added that flexibility back, and then I added the movement of my ribs in breath work. And when I talk about breath work, I'm not specifically talking about Wim Hof breathing, Hickson Gracie breathing, Cron Gracie breathing, or anything like that. I'm talking about taking deep breaths, being connected with your breath, and doing what feels good. And on your exhales and on your inhales. And I've had Miles on before on the podcast. I need to have him on again because we need to have him in for another Wim Hof seminar at my gym too. But yeah, had him on the podcast. I'll link that somewhere. And he talks a lot about breath work with a lot more intelligence than I would. So let's move on. Lifting, yoga, breath work, big goals. Let's talk about it. I did a podcast that actually a few different people quit their jobs because of. I really, really hope that it was a good call for you guys. But I did a podcast on accomplishing big things in 2022 and going in with the right attitude, setting big goals and crushing stuff. And so I really just wanted to bring this up again so we could talk about the people that were motivated by it and then kind of feel like they fell off, because most of us, that's how it goes. That's how it feels for me. You guys listen to me week in, week out and think of me as a good content creator. Some of you, I mean, assume if you listen to the show, you've got to, right? I'm not. I forget stuff all the time. I'm always behind on this stuff. It is a battle every single day. Every single day I wake up and the first thought is, got to do something for the podcast today, or I have something specific. I got to get an episode recorded today. And it always feels behind. Always feels discouraging. Always feels like there are 100 people that are better than me at it and have bigger audiences and have more pull. And I can't figure out what separates those 100 people from me. And it's discouraging. And you go, man, I've put in 2 years and 3 months into this podcast. I've put in 27 months of podcasting. And besides like my Patreon page, which doesn't have many patrons in it, you guys should definitely check out. I've made like no money from this podcast. If you think about how much I've spent on computer, microphones, lights, all these different things, I am aggressively negative on the podcast when it comes to finances. Obviously, we advertise through simplifyingjiu-jitsu.com, which is a separate business. So I am lying to you a little bit, but still, I'm not lying to you about the discouragement. The constant feel of failure when you're trying something that is different is really, really tough. It's really discouraging. It really weighs on you. And so that's why I wanted to talk about setting big goals again. How do we get out of it? How do we get out of feeling this way? If we feel this way, how do we get out of feeling crappy about creating, about branding, about whatever big goal that we set, whatever big career change that we decided? One of the biggest things is getting a ton of perspective. That is getting a ton of inspiration. I talked about this as an artist and I didn't dig into it as much as I could have because I planned on talking about it more here. get inspired. What inspires you? Uh, I sent out an email like a week ago, and it was 3 random videos that inspired me throughout the week. I love using YouTube for inspiration because everything's free and it's just so easy. And so I think the 3 videos were, there is one called Margot Cicerelli Berimbolo Flow. And it's like a 5 or 6 minute video about Berimbolo, about her teaching Berimbolo, but she also talks distance management. She talks a few things. And I didn't feel like I was learning a bunch of technique from the video, but I was just watching and I was going, oh, she does that different. She does that. And then she would teach something and she would say something different. And it wasn't like I jumped in and said, oh, now everything's changed, but it inspired me to go into the gym and try something new. It inspired me to say, hey, I don't do Berimbolo very much. I'm actually not very good at it at all. I want to get better at it. So I started playing it more. And I just decided it would be fun, especially because for me, I'm at a point where my ribs are starting to feel good. And I thought I would try to play a little bit of a game that could test that. And I think it's been helpful and I've been able to do it. But I got inspiration from that, right? Because it's jiu-jitsu. Of course, you get inspiration from jiu-jitsu. Well, I also got inspiration from a song. And I shared that too, from The Greatest Showman with Hugh Jackman. If you ever want to see Wolverine sing, The Greatest Showman's a great movie. Some of the music's on is really good. I'm not a big musical guy. Not like I'm not a big music guy, but I'm not a big musical guy. But it was a very, very good musical. And there is a point where Hugh Jackman is trying to get Zac Efron to join. Zac Efron has a lot of money and he is like upper class at that time. And he's trying to get him to join him running the circus. And the circus is looked very down on. And he sings him a song at the bar and they talk about getting out of this life that you don't want to be in. It's called The Other Side. And to me, that's a super inspirational song, even though it's about a circus. It's about a Disney movie, but I got inspired by it, right? Because I can go in and I can say, okay, I really, really love this idea that it's not about the money. It's about doing what excites you. It's about doing what warms your heart and getting out of, the same old part you got to play. It's just something that inspired me, right? Something else, like I said, talking about football. There's a Hulu Hulu video, documentary about Tom Brady. And I think it's on Hulu. It's on ESPN Plus. I think it's on Hulu and ESPN Plus. And it's called Man in the Arena. It's like 9 episodes. I think they're all 9 of his Super Bowls, Super Bowl seasons. Like seasons he made it to the Super Bowl. He didn't win 9 Super Bowls. But it's all about that. It's all about him going to the Super Bowl, but it's also filmed a year ago while he was still an athlete, while he was still in the mindset. He had not forgotten the mindset that got him where he is. And I think that you can get a ton of inspiration from that, right? One of the best athletes of our generation, not really athletes, one of the best artists of our generation, Tom Brady, ran like a 6-second 40. Anybody listening to this show could run a faster 40 than Tom Brady. That's really slow. But he's considered one of the best athletes of all times because he really understood how to play football. He really understood mindset. He really understood, he really understood how to see the game that he was playing. Some of the really simple conversations. I'll send out one to my email list. There's a YouTube video that I think about that you guys will really like. So when I do my next inspiration things that I find inspiration, and I'll make sure to share this with you. But there's just a video of him and his old coach, Bill Belichick, talking, and they're talking about how they stole a route, something that receiver runs. They stole it from Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning gave him some advice on it, and Tom Brady called up the offensive coordinator that right after Peyton Manning told him and goes, hey, we got to add this now. And someone who looks at sports that way, someone who looks at jiu-jitsu that way, it's going to be really tough to deal with. Somebody who can look and say, whoa, that's something I haven't thought of. I've got to add that. I've got to add that to be a better artist. That's huge, right? Those are just things that when it talks about inspiration. So when you are chasing your big goals, make sure you're getting inspired. Make sure you have people that you're following. Something that I really liked that was really helpful for me is Russell Brunson. He runs ClickFunnels, huge business. He talks about your dream 100, your 100 brands that you're trying to be like, or for instance, whatever you're trying to do. Maybe you're just shifting, maybe you quit your job because you were shifting just to a different job that you thought you would enjoy more. It has nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. Make sure that you find people that are in that space, that are creating, that are making money, that are making big things happen, and then get inspired by them. That's like all I'm ever hoping for on the podcast is like, I'll show you guys talking about different training methods and things like that. But if I could just inspire you to think about jiu-jitsu slightly different, then you get more out of this podcast than anybody else. All you have to do is tweak your mindset a little bit. And the best way to do that is getting a lot of perspectives, finding a lot of inspiration, and find things that inspire you. Watch them over and over. Get new ideas from them. Find a podcast that inspires you. Listen to it over and over. I've probably listened to, there's an interview on the Tim Ferriss show with Greg McKeown, who wrote Essentialism and Effortless. And those are two different books. And he crushes it on that podcast. And I've probably listened to that podcast like 5 times. I actually think I got more out of the podcast than I did the books, and I love the books. But like, it's just so it's so nice when you find something that inspires you and then you focus on it. But back to the Dream 100. So with the Dream 100, we find 100 people that are trying to create, that inspire us. And then what we do is we've only followed them on stuff. Honestly, most of the people that you went to high school with, that you follow on Instagram, literally bring you down with their posts. Their posts are so negative. They're so whatever. They're so non-related to what your vision is and what your goal is, that following them is probably useless. It's probably deterring you from accomplishing big things. Follow people who are accomplishing big things. Follow people who inspire you. That's who we should be looking up to. That's who we should be thinking about. That's where our content that we consume should be coming from. Not freaking Uncle Lou who hated the halftime show because everybody was black. Come on. Don't that was too much. Shouldn't have said that. Let's move on. So coaching and instructing. This will be the last thing that we talk about on today's random show. This is something that I've been pushing at my gym a lot. So what I did was I fired myself as the head instructor at my gym. I was holding my gym back. I was bottlenecking my gym. What do I mean by that? So what an instructor is the person that the technique of the gym comes from, a head instructor at least. I have like 1,000 good instructors at my gym though. And so me saying I need to be the head instructor, it didn't make sense anymore. There's too much good technique. I was gone all of December. I had COVID. I was at Worlds. And so like the first 2 weeks of December, I'm at Worlds. I'm back for maybe a day. I have COVID. And then it's like Christmas and stuff, right? So you're just not at the gym at all. And in December, my guys still got better. I came back to the gym in January and guys were still better. So me thinking the technique needed to come from me was just me probably being arrogant. And so we decided the best move was to move the head instructor position to my dad. Why? Because he is a super good instructor. He has consumed more jiu-jitsu content than probably any human being ever. And so when it comes to instruction, when it comes to, hey, this is what techniques you should be working, and this is how you should be working them, like, man, there's nobody better. Why weren't we doing this already? But for me, I split that head instructor job and threw it away. It's his now because I wasn't doing a good job of it. I was focused on being the head coach. And that's the job that I want. What does the head coach do? What's the difference? So, an instructor is somebody who teaches you, it is somebody who takes you and puts you in the car with them and drives you to the place you're supposed to go. A coach is different. A coach will give you some of the tools that you need, but then a coach will say, hey, you need to get in the car by yourself and you need to go that way. That's the way that you need to be going. A coach focuses more on the individual. An instructor instructs the entire team. And I think understanding that there is a difference. And for jiu-jitsu coaches, if you're going to run a gym, understand that there are a lot of jobs in the jiu-jitsu gym, in the jiu-jitsu team, a lot of different jobs. There is marketing, there is sales, and you can, of course, have somebody doing both. There is merchandise sales, which is different than reoccurring billing sales, because you now have supply chain and things like that. There is your coaches, right? Your people who help the individuals that push people to better themselves. For me as a coach, something big that I've been getting on people about is my guys that have been trying to lose weight, getting on them about it. Saying, okay, well, what are we going to do differently this year? How are we going to lose weight? Who's staying on you? Something else as a coach that I do. I don't teach a ton of technique. If somebody is having trouble with single leg X guard, I say, oh, cool. I am the facilitator. I'm not the instructor as much anymore. I still teach classes. But when I am at the gym, I'm thinking coach first now. And I say, okay, well, you should go work with that guy because he's got a great single leg X, or you should work with this guy because he's working on passing single leg X. So you guys just positional spar a bunch, then you'll be good, right? Then you guys will get better. Instead of it just being the instructor, every gym needs an instructor. But if you want to be great, I think you need more. I think you need quite a few instructors. It's just impossible for all the technique of the gym to come from me. And I'm just starting to realize that more and more. And I am as obsessed about jiu-jitsu or obsessed with jiu-jitsu as anybody. I'm as excited about jiu-jitsu as anybody, but I just can't be all instructor and all coach. Have to switch between the two. And I think that if you are a school owner, learning to create the job and then to pass it off to somebody is one of the hardest things for school instructors, right? Because when you create the job of merchandise sales, you start to make some money from it, because you have to create that job, but it's a battle. It's months of emailing people from locally and from Pakistan and trying to figure out where you can order your merchandise from, what makes the most sense, what can get our logos on it. Oh my gosh, that's outrageously expensive. Oh my gosh, we need to change it up. We've got to do different. We need a new logo design. Once you create that job, though, and it starts to make money, then you go, I can't give this job to somebody else because then I won't be making that money. But imagine if you weren't wasting your time on that job and you were only making half the money from it. Then you got to put all that time you were spending on marketing, on membership sales, on anything like that. And so I just think as a grappler, trying to understand, or as a coach, trying to understand the coach and the instructor role, the technique role doesn't have to come from you. There's one thing I think that has worked at my gym. It is the next guy up mentality. If you're a white belt and you come to my gym, I guarantee you, if you get beat up by somebody who's good, unless you're annoying and they hate you, I guarantee you, if you get beat up by somebody who's good, they're going to say, hey, either this specific technique is what you should be working, or this idea is what you should be working. Like I said, just have a bunch of instructors at my gym. And so, yeah, that's the random show for you guys. Hope you guys like this one. And that is the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Though random shows, man, I I have a lot of fun doing the random shows because what I always feel like is it's like a look into my brain. My wife and I were talking about business books that we like, and she was saying that she really likes the book Essentialism. I reference it all the time on the show, but it's probably one of my favorite business books. I used to reference or recommend the 4 Hour Work Week a lot, and I stopped recommending that to people because it seemed like people didn't get as much out of it as I did. And my reasoning behind it, or certain people, right, at least in the jiu-jitsu space, a lot of people seemed to get overwhelmed by it because there's a lot in the book. There's just so much information. But what I love about the book is that I can keep reading it and keep reading it and keep rereading it, and I learn more and more because there's so much information. But really, all that book feels like to me is kind of a look inside the brain of Timothy Ferriss. I feel like when I do a random show, you're getting a look inside the brain of Josh Mckinney, because that is what it is like to be in my head for when I'm thinking about jiu-jitsu, when I'm opening the box of jiu-jitsu, whatever comes out, comes out. And I think that for some people whose brain works that way, you get more out of these random shows, these random episodes where it's just little bits, and maybe you can get inspired by one statement and then you can go off and you could even re-listen to it, right? But for some people, they do better with the individual episode that is like, hey, we're going to focus this entire episode on one topic. I always try to mix it up, but I just like to kind of dig into why some people might like one, why some people might like the other. And of course, there's a group of people that like interviews. I doubt that there is a group of people that only listen to the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show when there's an interview. There could be, but I doubt it. And I just go that based off of numbers. They seem to be about the same regardless. But on that note, I didn't ask for this earlier when I was talking about emailing me, Josh at simplifyingjujitsu.com. If you guys have something that's not a question, if you have a suggestion for the show, I would love to hear it. Something that you say, hey, Josh, I really like this thing that you do. I would love if you did it in this space, or I would love if you, if you had more people do this, or you had this specific guest on. I'm always open to suggestions. And also, I am always open to pivoting on this show. You can know that by the fact that I'm canceling the Patreon. That is something to say, okay, we worked on this for a while, been experimenting with it. It's just not the thing. It's just not the thing that's going to work for us. We need something different, right? And that's I think, an important thing when you're a jiu-jitsu person. I think that's why people that really master jiu-jitsu can master a lot of other things in life, is just because you have to overcome so much. You have to problem solve so much. You have to learn so much. You have to fail so much. And really, that is what a business is failing a bunch and figuring out what works. And so that's what I'm doing with this personal brand right now. A lot of randomness in the intro, outro on my life. I guess I just needed somebody to talk to about what's going on in my head. And you guys are the perfect people to do that. This is like my, this is like my happy place when I just get to tell you guys about jiu-jitsu and what I think about it. And you listen for some reason. You guys, maybe you even believe some of the crap that I say. Regardless, just want you guys to know I appreciate you. And this year, the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show will get 10 times better, and it will get 10 times bigger. And so we'll Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu. And I'm really happy to have you guys being a part of it. I really appreciate everyone who listens to the show, everyone who shares the show, everyone who reaches out to me about the show. I really, really appreciate it. And please don't stop, because I always need motivation. I always need a pep talk from somebody. Keep letting me know if you enjoy the show. I really appreciate you guys. I hope today's episode wasn't too random. I hope the intro and outros weren't too random. I really did keep the random show name. I really did live that this episode. But most importantly, I hope that today's episode helps you suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. See you later, guys.